Well, John, talking about politics, there seem to be more blaming games these days, even in the middle of the crisis. President Trump is blaming WHO, blaming China. Some people are even talking about the accountability of China for, causing all of this and all of that. Well, actually, when it's time for global solidarity, we seem to be, fighting over things, sometimes for political reason, and some even say that in the beginning, WHO was not scientific enough. It had political considerations about China, about Japan, and other countries as well. So I agree with you that probably this ordeal confirms that facts and science are very important in our society, in human life. But nobody is free from politics in the world. So how do you kind of reassert the importance of facts and science over other political considerations?
So, politics is about pleasing people. And, for example, President Trump apparently felt that it was more important to reassure the American public that the virus would go away, this was no problem, everything would be back to normal by Easter. And that's politics. He said what he thought people wanted to hear. I think this pandemic and the terrible amount of morbidity and mortality and the economic consequences that it has wrought will, I think, make people realize that they have to listen to facts. It's not good enough just to hear what pandering politicians want to say, because their lives, their families, and their welfare depend on it.
Yeah, that reminds me of the expression used in addressing climate change, which is inconvenient truth.
Al Gore. Well, June, I've speculated on medicine, science, public health. I would be very curious to know your thoughts about how life will change after this pandemic in relationship to geopolitical affairs and economic affairs.
Yeah. Well, I think, to be sure, this pandemic crisis will be recorded as the biggest crisis faced by humanity in our generation. But eventually we will get over with it, as a solution to this problem, whether it comes in the form of a vaccine or treatment drug or herd immunity, we will get over with it. But when you have this magnitude of crisis, it will definitely have impacts on human life, human society for the years or decades in the future. So I can think of at least three consequences that might come as a result of this crisis in the domains of economy and domestic governance and international relations. First, in the economic area, I think we will probably be faced with more problems surrounding growing inequalities. Actually, growing inequalities have already posed a challenge of global scale even before the crisis. Now 1% richest population in the world own more than half of total wealth in the world, and this concentration of wealth in the hands of few people is getting worse and worse. How to deal with this problem of growing inequality has been a common challenge for all of us already. But after this, public health crisis, probably, even though a disease is a very effective equalizer, just like death is, but people's capabilities to cope with the crisis, the disease, are not all same. Some people can afford more money and resources to protect themselves. Right now we are in the middle of crisis, so everyone is struggling. But after this, probably, people who can afford will think about how better protect themselves, and the industry and market will respond to these new needs. And when you think about what is called the fourth industrial technologies, there was debate over whether these technologies will help decrease inequality or increase it. But after this, I think the availability of these technologies will probably be more important. Because it matters to our health and our life. And then I'm afraid, people will be more fussy about it. People will be more concerned about their health and their ability to meet these needs will vary more widely due to the growing inequalities. That's the economic consequence. And in terms of the domestic governance, I think we will see more confrontation between what can be called a state-centered approach and people-centered approach. If you think about it, in the modern world, the role of states have been growing in everywhere, in every area. But as the world is getting more and more globalized, there are more people-to-people exchanges, and there have been growing role of civil society, and a lot of people think that now we should take more people-centered or society-centered approach in dealing with our common problems, which has been the trend actually before this crisis. But now you have this crisis, and then whenever you have a crisis or during a wartime, the role of the government is very important. Even in Korea, some people think the recent general elections reflected that need, that sense of people who believe that the role of government should be strengthened in cope with this crisis. So that will kind of give us more kind of conflict between the state-centered approach, which will probably rise in the aftermath of this crisis, and people's need to take more society-centered approach. And And lastly, at the global level, at the international level, I'm afraid we might see more confrontation between globalism and nationalism. This confrontation was also there even before the crisis. If you think about President Trump's America First policy and Brexit, you can see that there is a surge of nationalism over globalism in recent years, which actually should be the other way around. Because we are faced with more global challenges, global issues, we need more global cooperation and global spirit of addressing all these problems together. But when there are a lot of pains on the ordinary people's life, usually politicians take advantage of that, and they call for more solidarity inside the nation, and hence the surge of nationalism. This will also be conspicuous, in my opinion, in the post-COVID-19 world.
Do you think, some have speculated that traditionally in these global crises, the United States has taken the lead of the world.
Yeah.
The United States has utterly retreated from that, and some have speculated that in the post-COVID world, the rise of China and China dominance will accelerate. Does that make sense to you?
Well, there is a certain possibility for that as well. China will continue to rise, to be sure, but not because of this pandemic crisis. If you think about it, it started in China. It affected Chinese population a lot. So probably China will also be struggling, not only from the pandemic itself, but from the economic consequences, which should be huge. Actually, the whole world, all the economies in the world will probably get into a recession, with varying degrees. So it is sad to see that the United States is not playing a leading role in the world as it used to in the past. So in a way, this kind of crisis might give an opportunity for the United States to resume that kind of leading role. But what we are seeing right now, not exactly like that. So that's why I'm saying that there should be more confrontation between globalism and nationalism.
So, Joon, you've outlined very articulately and clearly scenarios for three different aspects of life after COVID. What is your take on this? Will it be good or will it be bad?
Well, from my own point of view, as you know, I'm a globalist. I believe in multilateralism. I think we should overcome the year-long or century-long dominance of governments over people, over society. It's time for the whole world to go for a kind of global community where people in different countries can work together, not even through their governments. So that's what I want to see. So, on these three impacts I thought about, I hope after this crisis we will be able to work for reduction of inequality, for narrowing the gap between the rich and poor, which is good for everyone, including the rich. And I also hope to see, more focus on the importance of society, on the importance of people's engagement in dealing with this kind of crisis, even though, the importance of state or dominance of state is called for or expected at the time of crisis. When it's over, I hope we will get back to the continuation of rise in the society level activities all over the world, and also increasing confrontation between globalism and nationalism. Of course, I'm a globalist, so I want to see, globalism prevailing over nationalism, because without, cooperation, without working together among nations at the global level, we realize through this crisis that we really cannot properly cope with this magnitude of crisis, which is affecting all human life all over the world. So I hope that gives us a lesson that it's time for global solidarity rather than surge of nationalism in every country. Well, thank you very much, John, for being here with me and with the audience of Korea Brief. I think it was a very useful session for me, and I hope the audience will feel the same way. You want to say something to them?
Yeah, well, thanks for inviting me. It's really a privilege to be here, especially to have the opportunity to share some thoughts about how COVID is going to affect the developing world, which is my area of greatest interest. And also thank you for your own enlightening comments on the post-COVID world. I learned a lot as well.
Thank you.